Good evening and welcome to the Ombudsman program. My name is Diane Wellborn. I am the Ombudsman and I'm going to be your host for this evening's program. And before we get started, I want to remind the viewers that this is a call-in show, and particularly this evening with my wonderful guest, I think that public viewers are going to have some questions about the work of the Office of the Recorder. So I have with me tonight Brandon McClain, who is our Montgomery County Recorder, in charge of that office and all that is contained therein, and it's a lot. So we're going to open that up for people, and if you have a question, just call us in. So thank you very much for coming on the program tonight. I'm so glad that you could. Why don't you start off by kind of describing for our viewers the function of the Recorder's Office?
Absolutely. So as the Montgomery County Recorder, I'm responsible for the safekeeping of any ownership documents pertaining to real estate. So your mortgages, your deeds, your liens, they all come through my office. I'm also responsible for the safekeeping of nearly 40,000 veteran release documents. So we have nearly 40,000 veterans throughout the Miami Valley area. And so when those people are discharged from service, my fellow veterans, they should come down to the Montgomery County Recorder's Office, record their DD-214s. And so we keep those, and I always urge our veterans that I protect them with the same grace as I do my own, because even mine is recorded down at the Montgomery County Recorder's Office.
Right, so that keeps it safe.
Yes.
So nothing can happen to that very, very important document that people need to have. Why don't you explain to the viewers a little bit about how the functions of your office preserve our citizens' legal rights and also the heritage of this area.
Absolutely.
In our community.
As a citizen, every citizen in our community has the fundamental right to make certain information public, readily accessible for inspection and also review. My office holds documents from 1805 through to the present. Those documents are accessible upon them being recorded. We actually have them online. So seconds later, after someone actually has a document that they submit to be recorded, after it passes through inspection, is verified and validated, at that point in time, then it is actually placed on record moments later.
Okay. So the turnaround time is within hours for documents to be recorded in your office?
No, it's within minutes.
It's within minutes.
Yes,
even.
we're as close to instantaneous as you can be. So to the point where someone can actually present a document in our office. At that point in time, my staff would take it. It would then go to the back row where imaging would look at certain information for redaction purposes, and then upon it being processed and finalized in moments, it then would actually be accessible on our website. www.mcrecorder.org.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you gave that, and we'll probably ask you to share that website again as the program goes on. So does a person need to make an appointment to come into your office to have something recorded?
No, we cater and serve the public. We maintain regular general work hours, 8 to 4. 4:30 is actually when we stop recording, and then 4 we usually have the breakdown where the cashiers are balancing the drawers. But we are open between those hours of 8 to 4. At that point in time, any citizen can show up, whether it be to change ownership of a property, whether it be to obtain information concerning how to record a document, how to check to see if a mortgage has been processed. We can service all of those functions.
That's wonderful. You've given us your hours. Now, where are you located?
We're located on 451 West 3rd Street, Dayton, Ohio, 45402, otherwise known as the County Administration Building, and my office is located on the 5th floor. On
the 5th floor. Did you take the whole 5th floor with you and all of your documents?
We do. We have the majority of the 5th floor. We also had deed transfer that's located on the 5th floor as well, and that is under the auspices of the Montgomery County Auditor's Office. But generally speaking, the entirety of the 5th floor is my office.
Okay. And then there must be thousands of documents that you have. Do you have a number? Is it possible to know that number?
I think that probably is not completely possible.
Okay.
What I can tell you is that I oversee approximately 254,000 parcel properties.
Okay.
So each one of those properties could have a different tier, a multitude of documents that were filed on them, whether it be leases, mortgages, deeds, or the latter. So we could have theoretically millions of documents.
Right.
The documents are going to range from 1805 to the present day.
What are you recording from 1805? What documents do we have that are that ancient?
Oh, wow. Deeds.
Okay.
Old, we'll call them basically the precursor to a mortgage.
Okay.
You know, there are certain things that have kind of changed as time has, obviously, over centuries. The ORC, or the law at that point in time, really controlled or dictated what documents were able to be recorded. We still see that happening today, except the law has been more uniformly contracted under the uniform, ORC rather.
Okay, the revised code rules that. Then it does. What are some of the most common documents that citizens would see in your office? You've already mentioned deeds. What are some of the other more common documents that get recorded?
I'd probably say about 75 to 85% of the documents that come through the recorder's office are going to be the deeds and the mortgages, because they obviously relate to the ownership of the home. Other documents that we would see that maybe are not commonly known would be easements, plats. Also, we would have mechanics liens, and also your federal tax liens as well. So those would comprise, for the most part, the other documents that we would see, generally speaking.
I see. And what type of individual is most frequently visiting your office?
You know, it can be every person from any and every walk of life, whether it be a consumer, a citizen who walks in off the street and just wants to get, you know, a copy as a courtesy of their deed. They can come down to my office and do that. We readily every day have people come down and get a copy of the deed to their home. You know, so we'll see obviously the everyday customer, citizen come in. We also have title companies, mortgage companies that also utilize our office on a daily basis very regularly. We also have abstractors who do title work. We talked about, you know, say for instance on a deed with a property, we still do have some old structures here in our area, thankfully, you know, that are from the 1800s. And so an abstractor could possibly actually do the title work on that to show that property has a life that spans from, say for instance, 1890, and see who the owner is of that property, when it was built, and actually will be able to tell you, if that structure is still existing in our community, who the owner is today.
And so this is all online, so individual citizens could then, in the comfort of their own home with their computer, could research that history of properties to see when it was first settled, so to speak?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The same information that we offer to a citizen who will walk in off the streets in our office are the same ones that we offer to the citizens in the comfort of their own home, that being again at www.mcrecorder.org.
That's good. We want people to know so they can look their things up. So then there are probably people that come in that are doing historical research as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it very user-friendly?
Yes, we are always constantly trying to make improvements. Under my tenure, I've seen things that you know, I like and I enjoy, but I believe that as a public servant, we always should be in the process of making things better, because things always can get better.
Right.
And so while I like the direction of where we are and where we're going, I do believe that in time we will continue. Actually, I can assure you that we will continue to evolve and implement new ideas and new programs and new initiatives to make sure that as the times change, as our community shifts and grows, so does the office.
Good, wonderful. I am being told that we have a caller on the line. So, caller, we'd very much like to hear your question. You're on the air.
Okay, thank you. I just tuned in, and I heard him talking about deeds, so I had a couple questions about that. Before I start, I do want to thank the Ombudsman for hosting these monthly shows. I find them to be very informative and learn a lot from watching the shows. And again, thank Mr. McClain for taking his time to explain what he does and how different people can utilize his office. But here's my question. I had a friend whose husband died, and she wasn't sure whether or not she was on the deed. I'm wondering if you can tell me how she could she just call in and find that out? I think you mentioned getting a copy. Can you tell me if there's a cost for getting a copy of a deed?
Thank you very much for that question and for your compliments. We'll get your question answered for you right now. Thank you. Take it away.
All right. Thank you for your compliments. That means a lot, because I think every day what we should be doing is making sure that we're serving the public the best way that we can. The question being, how would someone verify who is on their deed? They can go to my website, www.mcrecorder.org. They also can contact our office via telephone. That number is going to be 225-4275. Also, you can feel free to if neither one, if you don't want to look online or contact us on the phone, then obviously you can come down in person. We are located on the 5th floor of the County Administration Building. That information is readily accessible. I think the second question was concerning the cost of a deed to be obtained. You can actually print out your deed from the confines of your home. Your tax dollars have already paid for this service. So if you want to sit at home and print out a copy of your deed, that's something I would encourage you to do, and it's something that does not cost you a red cent. So that's a good thing. If in fact you come down to the Montgomery County Recorder's Office and want to get a copy of your deed, at that point in time you would go to my copy center. They would be able to make a copy of that deed for you, and the cost would be $2 per page.
Okay. And so this is open to anyone to come down and,
yes.
and do they have to show their identity at all, and
no.
for any documents that they're after? Okay, so
no.
if you don't have the ID with you, you can still get it done.
Absolutely.
Tell me, I understand that our county has an award-winning computerized tract index. So I'd be very interested in hearing about how that works and who primarily uses this, and what did we do to get this award?
Well, I think that when we look at the daunting task of managing, organizing, and tracking theoretically millions of documents, over 250,000 plus parcels, we're talking about a lot. And so the way that our award-winning index track system would work is essentially it would allow an individual to locate a certain parcel property, not just by name, not just by address, but by legal description. Because what we see is that with property, unfortunately, we've seen instances where addresses can be changed. Obviously, we know names change, people get married, owners change hands, and so the legal description essentially becomes one of the facets of the fingerprint of our property, and that's what makes this system so important to the organization of our property in Montgomery County.
And what if somebody doesn't know their parcel number? What if that's not something that they've kept a hold of? How do they find a parcel number? So
if they didn't have their parcel number or the legal description, they could find that information out from the address.
Okay.
Okay. And then also all that information is public record. We take calls on a daily basis. I'm so thankful that I have a staff that is community minded and public servant driven and willing to help people. We have people call in for a multitude of questions. If that's one of the questions they get during the day, I assure you that's an easy day.
Okay.
So yes.
Well, that's good then for them. What does a person actually need to record a deed? What additional documents, or is it just the deed itself?
So generally speaking, say for instance, a general transfer action, a person may go down to Staples and buy a quitclaim deed. They would then fill out the quitclaim deed, obviously that being the first requirement. At that point in time, they would need to have it signed under the seal of a notary, so in the presence of that notary, and they would have to make sure they have their prepared by statement. At that point in time, they would come down, bring that document down after they've obtained all the signatures and met the other requirements, bring it down. First, before it has to be recorded under Ohio law, property has to be transferred. So they would stop by that deed transfer office, which is also located on the 5th floor, and then they walk it over and have it recorded.
Okay, it sounds like it's pretty simple, actually. And then how does a person change a name on a deed? You mentioned people get married, they remarry, things change all the time. How do you change a name on a deed?
Yes. So for any type of alterations, modification, changes, the individual would actually need to file a new deed, a separate deed. One of the things that I like to actually refer to it better, and I think everybody kind of has a more clear understanding, is when we look at adding a name or changing a name, what we're really talking about doing is updating.
Updating the deed.
Yes, updating the deed. And so that's why a new deed is required, because even though that old deed may have had a previous name on it or a former owner, that still is an original document. And so that's why we're going to want to make sure that we file a new deed, so that way we can protect the integrity of that original document.
Okay. I'm being told that we have another caller today. You're on the air, and we'd like to hear your question.
Yes, this is a great program. I didn't realize the work of the recorder was so complex, and I'm grateful to know more about it. My question is a historical one, but it's relevant to an immediate situation in my family. A piece of property belonging to my family that's been there for 3 generations. And now that we are trying to sell the property, we cannot find the deed. And we have searched everywhere. We've searched every box and safe that we have, and we can't locate it anywhere because it's 3 generations ago. Do you think that the document will be found in the recorder's office? The great-great-grandfather who purchased the property spoke only German, and I wonder if he even recorded it. So I'm wondering how to go about the search. Thank you.
That's a very good question, and I'm going to repeat it, and because I'm not sure all the other viewers could hear as we could. This gentleman has a problem with a 3rd generation, I believe he said, ownership of property, and they cannot find the original deed. We also have another call, so we're going to set that question down here and come back to it. And now we'll take the caller that's on the line waiting with a question. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for being on the show. I was calling because I was interested in how closely does the recorder's office work with the auditor's office as it pertains to tax liens on properties and things of that nature.
Very good question. Thank you. Excuse me. Okay, let's go back to the 3-generation property. What would you advise that caller to do with his predicament?
If the document is recorded, then it is certainly down at the recorder's office. So I do want to alleviate any type of stress or anxiety that is existing with the caller and their family about not being able to locate the deed that they had in their possession. If it has been recorded, then it is readily available and accessible down at the office. You can try to find it online at www.mcrecorder.org. If you still are having concerns or issues, please give me a call. I'm going to give you my community affairs specialist telephone number to contact me first thing in the morning, and I will give you a call back to make sure that we locate that deed so you can handle your family's affairs in the right way. That telephone number is 937-496-3017. Her name is Tristina Allen, and I will be making her aware to expect your phone call.
Very good. That might be a case where the person does not know the parcel number, because if it's been 3 generations, then it may not be lying around the house in a convenient place. Thank you for that response. Now let's go to the other caller. What is about the relationship she was asking between the auditor's office and the recorder's office with respect to deeds and other documents?
So under Ohio law, every auditor and recorder's office has to work in conjunction in the fact that before a document can be legally recorded, it has to first be transferred. And so the auditor is the exclusive authority for property being transferred. And so upon it being transferred, then at that point in time, it legally can be recorded.
Okay, very good. And any other relationships between the two, or is primarily the transfer and then prior to recording?
Primarily,
so that's it. Okay,
yes,
good. Just didn't want to leave out anything else that does that. Can a person have a lien put on their home without their knowledge?
Unfortunately, and by knowledge, I'll do a two-tier to answer the question. By official, I guess you could say, legal notice, yes, a lien can be placed on someone's property. I would urge and consider the fact that notice comes in many different forms. Aside from the person who maybe receives notice of the lien being placed on their property, prior to, there may have been some type of indication that there was going to be this type of activity that will lie in wait, whether it be a conversation that they had with a aggrieved party, whether it be a letter or some type of telephone call where someone said that money was owed. A lot of times what we see with liens being placed on people's property, and keep in mind there are a variety of different types of liens, the ones most commonly that we see relate actually to either being a mechanic's lien, or obviously with us being in the thick of tax season, we see federal tax liens as well. Those are probably, in my opinion, the two most common liens that we see being involved concerning the recorder's office.
And so if a person does not receive a notice in the mail, or if they don't believe a telephone call that they get, or if they choose to ignore it, then the lien can proceed on. Is that correct?
Absolutely. They can actually have the lien be placed on their property, and then at that point in time, they would have to then go through legal procedures to have that released.
Yes. Okay. Great. Well, that leads us into a good time to talk about the fraud alert notification system and how citizens and residents can participate in that system that you've set up. Why don't you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So my background, I am an attorney by trade and was a magistrate judge at Dayton Municipal Court. As an attorney, from time to time, I would come across individuals in our community, our neighbors, who had had their homes taken from them. Now, I don't mean this in the literal sense that someone actually, attached a hitch to that property and drove it away. That's not what I mean. But what I do mean is that by way of a forgery, a forged deed, ownership of that property unlawfully changed hands, and that person who forged that document then was able to assert those same ownership rights as if they were the true and lawful owner. Very frightening circumstance. When I was a magistrate judge, I presided over landlord-tenant real estate cases. I would have these individuals come into my courtroom, attempt to try to assert ownership documents to possibly, say for instance, evict people for non-payment of rent or criminal activity in the premises. After paying money for an attorney, going through a court proceeding, filing fees, they would then be told that they were not the true and lawful owner. It dawned on me very quickly, as I'm sure it is to the viewers, why would someone go through all of this financial and legal pain if they were not the true owner? And I think the reality of that is that they wouldn't. This was someone who was a victim. And so when I became the Montgomery County Recorder, the first 60 days I implemented a program called the Fraud Alert Notification System, the FAN system, to make sure that as a property owner, we could be proactive as opposed to reactive and protect our most valuable investment, aside from our soul and our family, that's our home. Best evidence of why we wake up early in the morning is why we come home late at night. That's what our home represents, why we spend the majority of our time amongst strangers as opposed to with friends and family. That's what the home represents. And so what the Fraud Alert Notification System does, it's a free service. And registration, I think on average, takes less than 47 seconds. It will allow a property owner to receive notification anytime there's a transaction that occurs that relates to the ownership of their property. So anything that pertains to a deed, a mortgage, or a lien, you receive notification and be able to combat the effects of those things before they turn into something that is very terrible. And so I think that, you know, when we talk about how to combat, especially when we have liens placed on property that are not legitimate, I think that we are talking about a timing issue. When we talk about someone having property that has been taken away from them by way of a forged deed, I know we're talking about timing, because in both of those situations, time can either be your best friend or your worst enemy. We're talking about the circumstance where time is of the essence, and if you're not careful and make sure that you maximize your time, you're going to be in a position where you're chasing a ghost.
Mm-hmm. And in the case that you saw it as a judge on the bench, how does a person undo that? Then how does that get rectified?
Well, you know, so, you know, the fraud alert notification system is a free program. As an attorney, what I can tell you is that, unfortunately, these type of cases, like all cases, cost attorney fees, cost money. I want to say on average, you're talking about usually between $2,500 to $3,500 in attorney fees alone. And then obviously filing fees with a court and a legal action to commence. In the meantime, the marketability of the property is affected. Those things take thousands of dollars, not to mention the uncomfortable circumstance that would exist if any of us would fall victim to this type of circumstance. Those have an assortment of costs. The fraud alert notification system is free.
It's free.
And that's why I've been so adamant and aggressive in making sure that our citizens know about this. I received unprecedented permission from the Ohio Tax Commissioner to actually have an insert placed in our tax bills about the importance of this program and what steps a property owner could take to protect that home.
So basically, every homeowner should go online and register in the FAN program to protect their property.
Absolutely.
Okay. And if there's something fishy going on with their property or some notification that they should receive, then in turn, do they hear from the recorder's office?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So they will receive notification by either or a method of either by email, correspondence, or both if they so chose. At that point in time, they would then contact our office. The listing actually has some instructions in it. They would contact our office. At that point in time, we would then verify if there was in fact an unlawful or unpermitted transaction, and then law enforcement could be involved. We've already seen the dividends of this program in protecting our community, and I'm proud of that work because I believe that, you know, when we look at what it means to protect one person's home, we were talking about, in essence, by protecting one, we are protecting all. If two neighbors protect the other two neighbors on the street, now we have a whole street protected. If the one street protects the two streets around it, now we have a block. Two blocks protect the other two blocks, we have a neighborhood, and so forth, so have you, till now we have a township protected, we have a city protected, we have the entirety of the county protected. And now we are talking about a situation where we can deter people who would dare try to target some of our most vulnerable here. I've talked to seniors who've fallen victim to this. I've talked to young folks who've fallen victim to this. This is not a senior issue, it's not a young person problem. This is a property owner issue. Anyone who owns property could potentially be a victim, and that's why it's so important that we be proactive as opposed to reactive.
Okay, so you can give your website again so people can find the FAN program, or Fraud Alert Notification Program.
Yes, you can actually register for the program at my website, www.mcrecorder.org.
Good. You also, as a part of your recorder's office, you also have the Records Center and Archives. So why don't you tell the viewers what is stored there and how individuals can access what's there?
Okay. So the Records Center and Archives is located on the 6th floor of the Rybolt building. We have documents there that go from 1805 to 2016. We also have microfiche there as well. We also house other documents, not just from our county, but also from other counties, municipalities, and townships. So we have a variety of documents, some that don't even belong to our county, that we house for other counties as well.
Okay. And who are the primary users of the archives?
We see everyone from historians, you know, with us having, you know, I don't want to call them artifacts, but with us having documents that are so dated, you know, their condition being of the utmost importance, sometimes we have to actually seal them because they are so old and weathered, battered. And so generally speaking, we have people from historians, we have abstractors, we have title companies. On a rare occasion, we may have someone there who may be there to look for something concerning a mortgage. We have the everyday user. So we have a multitude of people ranging from the everyday citizen to one of the title abstractors.
Okay. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about what is scanned and what is microfilmed, and what's the difference from your point of view as being responsible for the archives and all the records?
Yes, well, I think that, and we had talked a little bit about it before the show, I think that obviously scanning is a more updated version of the microfilming. Here in Montgomery County, I'm honored to sit on the microfilming board. I believe that the microfilming certainly has its place in my office in our county, because we were talking about historical data, the preservation and the protection of that data. And so undoubtedly it needs to be protected. However, scanning gives us an opportunity to be able to protect that document, to be able to more readily access that document, because everyone doesn't have access to the equipment necessary, you know, at a moment's notice to look at microfiche, but they do concerning a scan. And so all of the procedures, the maintenance, safekeeping concerning microfiche are kept under the Ohio Revised Code.
Okay. And then since you have this large responsibility of providing access to all of these public records by citizens, by monitoring groups, probably by the press as well, what is involved if you have to make a public records request? Do people make that of your office, and please, how does that work?
Yes, we do get public records requests. At that point in time, they just have to make their request known. We ask just for the reasonable amount of time to fill the request. My office, as all of the county offices and county officials, are there for the public. We serve the public. So those requests, generally speaking, I think we take usually less than 30 days to fill them. It just depends on how large or how small the request is. There is no cost that's associated with the actual request. However, we just charge for whatever it costs for the copies to be made. Generally speaking, that is 10 cents per page.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean,
it's better than some offices.
Yes.
Some documents that we have, the deeds that we've spoken of in the property records, have been recorded for centuries. But as times change, we add new types of documents that we want to record. One that I'd like to ask you about are living wills, because that's something that hasn't been around for a really, really long time, although it's now very much advised that people have a living will. What have you seen as far as the increase in those types of documents, and are there any other types of newer documents that are appearing in your office?
You know, generally speaking, what we see with the living wills being recorded, a lot of times they'll come in as an exhibit or an attachment to a deed. You know, because they'll relate, you know, specifically a lot of times they may have a provision that concerns the ownership of a home or property. And so we usually see them attached onto a deed, some other type of ownership document, versus being a standalone filing. And so that's generally speaking what we see with the living wills. I do expect that to, you know, remain the standard, considering the fact that usually speaking the deed or other type of ownership document really kind of gives the living will a lot of its context concerning property. So I would expect that to remain. Concerning other type of due developments, right now we are experiencing some good things in our county concerning development, and so we will sometimes see new development plots being filed, and so those things will come in. And so that's a new filing that we see. Sometimes we also see easements when you look at people, maybe you've got a neighbor that, decides that they want to take, your yard as a shortcut to get to their truck. They may one day ask you for an easement. So we see those come in. I think that's something where a lot of folks don't really think about being a filing. And so I think that because of a lot of the developments that we're seeing in our county, we are seeing an influx in those type of documents.
I see. That's good to know. I've been told we have another call. So caller, we'd like to hear your question. You're on the air.
Yes, the fraud protection program seems to me to be so important, especially for vulnerable seniors. What can be done in cases where a caretaker or a religious or political organization moves in on an elderly person during the last time of their life and somehow persuades them to sign the deed to their property over to someone else in contravention of a previously existing will. I don't know if the recorder has any role in that sort of thing, but it is a problem that my neighbors have experienced. Thank you.
And thank you for that question. I'm going to repeat it so I think our viewers can hear us. The question concerns the role of the recorder when there is a senior and a scammer or a criminal, or who knows, maybe even a relative, is trying to get them to sign the deed over to them.
Regardless of what role, title that we occupy, most important role that we all occupy is that as a concerned citizen. As a concerned citizen, stuff like this honestly burns me up. I told you before we started, I have a grandmother's 98, about to be 99 years old, and this is something that to me really scares me when I look at how vulnerable our seniors in our community are. I have routinely referred these type of circumstances to the prosecutor's office. They have a great investigator there. I know they've done a lot of abuse, elder abuse work and other types of circumstances where senior citizens have been taken advantage of. They have a very great investigator that readily is there to try to help protect and sort out these type of complaints. I would love to give their number, but I would also like to make contact with the caller. I'm going to give out the same number I gave out earlier, if I may, that being 937-496-3017, my community affairs specialist. Please just let me know some more of the particulars and give a callback number so I can make contact with you so we can make sure that your neighbor is protected and the right person who needs to have their hands on this circumstance has it so we can protect that neighbor.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. I wanted to do just one follow-up with the living wills. The importance of living wills being connected to deeds. What about living wills for people who do not own property? Are those also recorded? Are you seeing those for people that live in apartments and rent? Yeah.
Right. We generally are seeing that those right now are not being recorded. Okay. I know that if they are to be documented, it would be at the probate court. Okay. And so we're not seeing those come in unless, like I said, it's as an attachment or some type of exhibit to an existing number.
Okay, to a deed. Thank you. I'd now like to shift gears just a little bit and talk about the Veteran Identification Card Program. You mentioned the importance of the recording of the DD-214s in your office, but you also have the Veteran Identification Card Program. Why don't you describe for all of us what that program is, what does it involve, and what is the benefit of doing it?
Absolutely. I'm a veteran. I believe that, especially in our community, military service is something that ties us all together because if you aren't personally a veteran, you know someone who is. And so to me, what this program is about is making sure our veterans receive the benefits that they earned. I'm not talking about a handout. I'm not talking about a freebie. I'm talking about something that was earned by their service to our great nation. When I was an attorney for the Veterans Treatment Docket that was overseen by Judge Atkins, we would have veterans who were suffering from not just visible but invisible wounds, veterans who were ready to turn a corner. Two obstacles they would face is that they couldn't find their DD-214. And then if they had a decent idea of how to obtain the DD-214, they couldn't prove their identity.
I see.
And so that was two big obstacles that I seen early on that were really standing in the way of people who may have been self-medicating. It's no secret the effects that opioids have had on our community. We would see people who maybe were suffering from, gambling, PTSD, alcoholism, opioids, and these were people who wanted to get on the right track, but just there was a separation, a hurdle that was separating them from getting to the services that would make them better. And so when I became the recorder, it was something that still was fresh on my mind as a veteran, and then also too being in a situation where we would see this happen. And so what this Veteran Identification Card program does is gives our veteran not just a token of respect from the county to them for their service to our great nation. This is a state-issued ID. Through this identification card program, I've connected our veterans with some nearly 400 plus businesses throughout the Montgomery County, Miami Valley area that offer us as veterans a benefit, a value, or a discount. We also have seen an increase in DD-214s. This program was released in September of 2018. To date, we have recorded more DD-214s since September than the office has in the last 10 years.
Oh. Congratulations.
And so, thank you. And this is the work of the people, because what we're doing is that DD-214 is a key, an access point to benefits. Your DD-214 is, everything from, your burial benefits, school benefits. It's more than just a discount at Home Depot. This is something that puts our veterans in position to receive the benefits that they earn. Everyone paid a different price, some more than others, but there's no doubt that what's earned is earned.
Okay. And with the Veteran ID card also, does this document also become public? Because DD-214s are very personal about
yes, they are.
Yes, and so is it, by recording it, does it become public?
No, it actually is an exception. And so I protect those DD-214s like it's my own, because mine is down there amongst them. And I take that very serious. That's a common question that we receive from a lot of our veterans. If I record my DD-214, everyone's going to be able to see it. No, that DD-214 is protected. Anyone who would try to inspect the DD-214 will have to provide sufficient documentation. Just anybody can't come down there and inspect it. It is protected. That is the best thing I think about it, is that, it's down there for, say for instance, if something was to happen to that veteran, their family should feel comfortable and safe knowing they can come down to the recorder's office, get a copy of that DD-214 so that veteran can get a proper military burial.
Okay. And if that is the case, then they just need to show their ID that they're related to the veteran? A
death certificate as well.
Death certificate.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That makes perfect sense. Other than talking about it tonight, what kind of outreach do you do to try to get the word out to veterans about this program?
Wow, I have visited, I can't say all because that's a lot. All is completely inclusive, but I have visited the strong majority of our township meetings, council meetings, trustee meetings. I've been to neighborhood associations, priority board meetings, fairs, community parades. I've sat down and ate dinner at people's tables if they'll feed me. I love food. Okay. I've tried to go anywhere and everywhere that I was allowed, in some places where maybe I was unwanted, because the information is too important. When we talk about, trying to service all, you can't leave one behind. And so it's very important, I think, for us to do every type of outreach effort. I've been to the VFW post. I've been to, any type of veteran military functions to make sure that, they're aware that this service is there, that I'm a resource, and that, together we can make sure that they're connected with services that they've earned.
Okay, very good. So this program is also available online at your website so that people can go on and apply for the Veteran ID card? Is it something they need to do in person?
Well, yes, so for the Veteran Identification Card, because it is a state-issued ID, they actually have to come in person. Okay. If they haven't recorded their DD-214s, they have to bring that with them, as well as 2 forms of valid identification, record their DD-214, and then 5 minutes later, we have them across the hall taking the identification photo, and they'll actually leave with that veteran identification card that day.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I hope people who didn't know about the program will be informed tonight, and they'll come down and visit your office with their DD-214s. And
Absolutely.
get that registered and get the card. Now, tell our viewers about RISFAC. That's RISFAC, the Ohio Regional Inter-Service Family Assistance Committee, and how it interacts with your office.
Yes, so RISFAC is essentially a collaboration of resources for military personnel, veterans, and their families, spouses and dependents. Our office is a member of RISFAC because it allows us to not just serve our veterans, but to serve their dependents, to serve their spouses, to serve their family members, to be able to have a better reach where if I don't have the answer, I can at least make sure I know where to get it for the person who needs it. And so RISFAC just allows us as a county to make sure that we are connected to other resources that members in our community may need, and we're able to get them to them at a moment's notice.
And who are some of the other members of this committee, this RISFAC?
The one that really I think comes to mind is the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, which talks about some of our what I call unsung heroes, people who may be helping our veterans get to and fro, and who ask for nothing in return, who wouldn't take anything in return. People who are doing some of the work that really doesn't get praised enough. The work of making sure that some of our veterans who may be suffering for some of those invisible wounds make it to and fro their appointments, in the manner and the respect and dignity that they've earned and stuff. And so that probably I think is one that really sticks out to me in my mind. That's just a fabulous organization, and it seems like every time I go to some outreach effort, they're right there. So I know if they're there, I'm in good company.
Okay, well that's very good to hear. How many people are employed in your office to get all this recording done and to get it done in a matter of minutes and to make copies for people and all the things we've discussed already? How many staff do you have?
I have 21 that's in the actual main office, the one that's located in the County Administration Building, and I'm thankful for each and every one of them. They make sure that the office runs efficiently because they usually are the first person that an individual walking off the street is greeted by. I've got my cashiers up front. I've got the back row that makes sure that documents are properly processed and information is redacted so that people can be protected. Their information can be secured and safe. And then after that is done, they then are uploaded, and then they go through a second process as well, and then they become live.
Okay.
Yes.
And it must take a long time to train staff in a complicated office with so many documents. The training period must be a while.
Well, I think that one of the things that I've seen is that people are really willing to help folks, and I can even state this, personally. When I came into the office, early 2018, it was, like being attached onto a fire hose. And, it was information coming at you from all different angles. The phone's ringing off the hook, but I always felt very comfortable and very secure that they had my back. And, and that's a good feeling to have when you're trying to learn how to serve, a county that's as big as ours. The folks are great. I'm blessed to have each and every one of them because, at the end of the day, I can't tell you how many, thank you emails I receive, how many phone calls I receive, where people call in and they ask questions that are affecting them. And every member of my staff, I've always received the same praise and compliments, and that being the fact the person was ready and willing to do what was necessary to make sure when the person got off the phone, if they didn't have the answer, they were given, hey, I'll get back with you. People just weren't left hanging, and that means a lot to me because I think that happens too often.
Yes, and it does mean a lot to citizens to be treated with getting the answer that they're seeking when they go that first time. You mentioned earlier in the program that your office, as the Montgomery County Recorder's Office, records items for townships and municipalities as well. Do you actually have holdings, records from other counties that are smaller and may not have capacity?
So we don't actually record the documents,
Okay.
but sometimes if they don't have proper storage, they could potentially enter into an arrangement, a contractual agreement for us to provide essentially that space for them to be able to house their documents that they've recorded. But if it's outside of Montgomery County, then no, we would not have any hands on recording it.
You wouldn't be able to record it, okay. And then there is a state association. I mean, every county has a recorder or has somebody serving that function, or does every
Yes.
county have a recorder?
Every county has a recorder, and we do have the Ohio Recorders Association. And I'm very involved in, sit on the legislative committee for the blockchain as well as for the fee determination. So pretty standard when an individual walks in, let's say they have a 3-page document, it can be a deed, mortgages are not going to be that small, but generally speaking, a deed is going to be, you know, say for instance 2 to 3 pages. If it's 3 pages, that person, when we talk about getting into more predictable fees, so people kind of understand what the threshold are as far as cost, first 2 pages of a deed is going to be $28, and then the additional page thereafter will be an extra $8. And so for that 3-page transaction, that would be $36.
I see. So that's 3 pages for recording that deed. Well, as an association, what is coming up for you all? What kinds of issues are you all as an association discussing as far as improvements in the process of recording or needed changes in legislation? What's on the front?
There is a lot on the front. There's a lot to be excited about. We've had discussions, some of them heated, concerning fees,
Sure.
what the fees should be versus what they are now. Recordation fees have not been raised for nearly 20 years in some different transactions, and so we have some significant lapses of time for the recordation fees where there's been no change at all. There are people out there who may want to see those things changed. We also have new developments that are coming down concerning blockchain, you know, which is a new technological, you know, circumstance where there's some ideas that are pushing the idea that possibly a piece of paper that's, you know, that's your deed, maybe that isn't needed. Maybe we can switch over to it just being technology and you just, you know, trust it. But that's, you know, a couple
That's
things
being
that we're
discussed,
discussing.
right.
It's being strongly discussed, yes.
Bet.
I'll say this, I think with when we look at the population that we serve, I just think that, you know, most people, even though they may not be from the Show Me State, there's still, they still have a property there.
They want to see that deed.
They want to see that deed, and you know, and I'm probably of that opinion as well. Just for the simple fact, when we look at you know, what people have to go through to get a copy, to get the actual deed to their home, that's not something that you want to leave to chance or uncertainty.
Right, exactly. And then are there any particular changes that you are looking forward to making in your office in the near future?
Yes, well, we, you know, I've been blessed and fortunate where, you know, I've been able to implement, you know, different programs. So we've had the FAN system, we've had the, you know, veteran identification. You know, also I started up, you know, kind of like a collaboration I call Coffee for Veterans, you know, where we would go to different, you know, communities and talk with veterans, you know, over coffee and a donut and discuss, you know, what can we do? You know, what can I do? You know, and you know, really just be kind of like, you know, a hand, you know, to try to assist when possible. You know, we also are looking at possibly rolling out a couple new payment options. I'm proud to say that in the very near future, we will be able to begin accepting credit and debit card payment transactions as well as ACH, you know, which will not only be convenient, but also safe and secure and user-friendly. You know, in addition, we will also be rolling out electronic, rather e-recording, so people will be able to record certain documents online. And so not only will they have the convenience, but if we look at something, say for instance, a mortgage that could be 100 pages, which is not uncommon, could you imagine the postage on a document that's 100 pages?
Yes, it's expensive.
It's expensive. And so those costs are something that accrue over time, especially if we look at a mortgage company or a title company over the course of a year. So those are costs that we would like to save them. We would like to allow them to keep that money in-house so they can use it to put back in our community.
Okay. We have very little time left, so I'd like to ask you first to give the website again and any phone numbers you would like to offer to the viewers in case they didn't get them down yet, and then I'll ask you for closing remarks after that.
Okay. My website is www.mcrecorder.org. Any questions, you can contact my community affairs specialist. Her name is Tristina Allen. Her telephone number is 937-496-3017. Or if you have any general questions for the office, you can contact my office at 937-225-4275.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And I also want to add for the viewers that should you not have received the numbers that our recorder was giving out, you can always call the Ombudsman's office, and we know how to help you get to the recorder's office. So when all else fails, give us a call, and we will help you out with that. Thank you very much for the good information that you've given tonight and for taking your time to come and provide that. And I want to thank the viewers for watching the program this evening. Good night.